بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of 40 Hadith by the late Imam Khomeini. The next issue is about what Imam Khomeini calls muwazana. Muwazana means balance, comparison. And here it is more suitable to translate it as comparison. He says one of the things that help a lot in suluk, in our journey, and we need to be committed to it, is muwazana. Muwazana comes from wazn, weight, means to weigh. Like, when you have a scale and you compare the weight of, for example, a good with the weight that you have. And here he means that we should compare benefits and harms of bad traits of character which are caused by shahwa, ghadab, and wahima. As you remember, we talked about these different faculties of the soul. So if we just follow without controlling, without regulating our lower desires, our appetites, or our anger, or our thoughts and ideas that come to our mind, if we just follow them, it will produce lots of bad traits of character and then lead to lots of bad actions. On the other hand, he says, if we follow aql and shara and religion, it will lead to having akhlaq hasan, lots of good traits of character, virtues, and will lead to many good actions. So an intelligent person should think, what would be better for me? To go to this route or that route? To just leave open the way for my shahwa, for my ghadab, for my wahm, to take me to their own direction, or to listen to intellect and to religion and just do virtuous things and acquire virtuous qualities? Which one is better? For sure, if we follow the route of satisfying our lower desires and anger, and let our thoughts and ideas take us to unknown places, it would lead to miserable consequences. For example, Imam Khomeini says that ghadab, anger, if it is not controlled, then as soon as someone would not agree with us, would make a little, disagreement or opposes our ideas, we will try to attack them, to damage them, to harm them, sometimes to destroy a person's reputation, sometimes a family, sometimes a nation. In the course of history, how many times people, because of their anger, they have damaged thousands, if not millions, of families and people and the entire nation, or even nations. Or, for example, if we just leave shahwa open, There is no way to be satisfied. And he makes a general point here. He says, there is no way to be content, to be fully satisfied if we go after our desires, lower desires, appetites. If you give all the things which are available in one city or one country. For example, if someone is after money, after power, after fame, after sex, if has everything in that city or that country, still wants more. There is never, ever any chance to be content. And by thinking of what he or she does not have, he would suffer. Why I don't have that? The late Imam Khomeini in one of his speech said, if you give full control over earth, then they want to control other planets. They are not happy with running a big country. They are not happy to run one continent or all continents. They want more. And then he says this is actually one point that many scholars and great philosophers of Islam, including his Sheikh, his teacher, his master, he says with great respect, this is what his teacher, the late Shahabadi, as I mentioned in the introduction, has mentioned and has argued for many important teachings of Islam based on this idea of fitrah, and that is in our fitrah there is infinite attraction towards perfection. He doesn't explain the details here, and he says it's beyond the limits of this book. But just I make a little reference to this idea. There is unlimited attraction or desire for us, or attraction to perfection. If you find your perfection in money by mistake, the result would be that you want unlimited money. If you find attraction of that real perfection in sex, you want unlimited sex. If you want fame, power, because this is a mistake, you are going to a wrong route and you will never be satisfied, because this dunya is the world of limitations and interactions and hitting others' interests. No way to have absolute unlimited power in dunya or desires, satisfied in dunya. Our only full satisfaction comes when we are connected to the real, absolutely perfect thing, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To the real, absolute beauty, absolute power, absolute pleasure, which comes when you are near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should do this comparison. Do we want to go to this path which leads to miserable consequences? You may have more, but you feel more poor. This is very, interesting and at the same time very, strange. You will have more money, but you will have more sense of poverty. You want more. You will have more pleasure, but you are less happy. it makes you suffer. And also, in order to remain in that position, you have to do more and more sinful actions. Harm people, harm yourself. Or you want to go to the path of aql and shara and become a virtuous person. And then you would have more and more of real pleasure. You would live in a small home, which is even maybe not owned by you. But you are fully happy. You are at peace. You feel actually sad when you see people who have everything, they are not satisfied. You feel sad for them. You want to be given opportunity to be alone. But those people are frightened of being alone. Even if they are in their own big home or driving their big cars, they are very afraid, much afraid of themselves. So we should make this comparison. And then Imam Khomeini says, plus there is another problem. And that is how many years you can enjoy yourself in going after this line of appetites and desires. Maybe maximum 30 years, 40 years. Since you become mature, till you are still able to enjoy. Because when you become old, then you would not have that much of chance to enjoy. Your senses would go to decline. Your pleasure would go to decline. All different types of illnesses would come. Even if you have the best food, you cannot really enjoy it. Imam Khomeini says, I suppose that instead of 30, 40 years, for you it is 150 years. That's, we suppose. So even if you have 150 years and you can for 150 years have full health and full sensation and enjoy. And no problem happens to you, no suffering, no calamities happen to you. Just suppose. Okay, what is going to happen after that? Compared to an eternal life that we have ahead of us. And then he starts talking about the pain and suffering that can happen to us, may God forbid, in the hereafter. He says, if whenever you hear about fire and hell and punishment, you think of fire like dunya and punishment and suffering and pain like dunya, you are totally wrong. Fire in this world, it's accidental. In essence, it's cold. This fire, compared to the fire in the hereafter, is nothing. This fire burns the surface of the body. No fire can burn the soul in dunya. Yes, the pain of body, when body is burnt, is understood by the soul. But the soul is not burnt because soul is not physical. And this fire of dunya can only burn something physical. But the fire of the hereafter, تَطَّلِعُ عَلَى الْأَفْئِدَةِ, will burn also the soul, the heart. And even the fire of the hereafter, the way we normally understand it, which is caused by sins and bad actions, compared to the fire which is caused by vicious qualities, is nothing. If someone has committed a sin which is very, very bad, the fire for that sin is much greater than any worldly fire. But if someone has a vicious quality, it's even worse. The fire is even greater. So he says, this fire of actions, he calls it Jahannam A'mal, the hell of actions, the hell which is there for bad actions. It's easy and it's cool and pleasant compared to the fire which is for vicious qualities. Like if someone is greedy, if someone denies the truth, if someone is full of loss, there is a fire that we cannot even imagine. He says you cannot even think of that fire. He says in some reliable, authentic hadith, it has been mentioned that in hell there is a valley for the people who are mutakabbir, arrogant. So takabbur, arrogance, is a quality, it's not an action. So there is a valley in hell for those who are mutakabbir, who are arrogant, which is called saqar. In the hadith it is said that that valley, which is called saqar, complained to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the internal heat, that I have great heat in myself. Of course, this is metaphoric language. Please give me permission to release part of this heat. When Saqar was permitted, just had one breath, and then the whole hell went into fire. So this shows that the greatest heat in Jahannam comes from vicious qualities so far. But it can go even further. And when it reaches Jahannam, which is caused by kufr, by rejection of the truth, rejection of faith, by having corrupt beliefs, by your own will, that's even worse. And he says we have to be very careful about these qualities when they lead to lacking and losing our iman. Jealousy as a vicious quality is so bad that we mentioned. But jealousy is like fire which can burn iman. And if jealousy remains uncontrolled, then it would no longer be just jealousy. It would lead to losing your iman. Or for example, hubbud dunya, excessive love for dunya, and excessive love for fame and position. These are the things that damage and ruin Iman. And this would be worse than sinning or even worse than vicious qualities. And he says, Jahannam kafir و جهنم عقاید باطله از آن دو جهنم به مراتب سخت‌تر و سوزان‌تر و ظلمانی‌تر است. The hell which is caused by denial of the truth, rejection of faith, not just being an atheist. Maybe someone is an atheist and is, researching, studying. We are not talking about Salman before finding the faith, or about Abu Dhar when they were not still a believer. No, we are talking about people like Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, who had access and presentation of the truth and rejected and opposed it, and also blocked the way for others. We are talking about such people. Their hell is even worse than the hell which is caused by sins or by vicious qualities. It's more painful, more burning, and darker. Then Imam Khomeini says, my dear, ay Aziz, it has been proved in higher sciences, he means philosophy and mysticism, Irfan, that there are different levels for intensity and they have no limit. If you think of severe punishment, then it can be even more severe, and then it can be even more severe. There is no limit. Those who know mathematics also know, for example, when you say infinite has no fixed limit. It's not that infinite is where you can finally reach. There is no limit. For intensity also, there is no limit. So punishment can be always more and more. He says, okay, if you have not studied philosophy, if you have not had your own mystical experiences, at least this is what we learn in religious sources. Look at our books of hadith. Hadiths that all Imami scholars have accepted. Du'as and munajat of Ahlul Bayt, which are accepted by all. And see how they express their concern about the hereafter and about the punishment of the hell. And then he says, for example, the munajat of Amirul Mu'mineen. Munajat of Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. In particular, he refers to Du'a Abu Hamza. And he says, please reflect on these du'as. He says, you don't need to read the whole Du'a Abu Hamza in one night. He says, we are not like Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, that we can recite and actually say those beautiful words in one night with full attention and reflection and understanding. We are not like Imam Zainul Abidin. So at least every night try to reflect on 1/4 of it, 1/4 of it, or 1/3 of it, but carefully. And then think about yourself. Or for example, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about the punishment in the hereafter, he talks in the way which is worrying. Allah, with his greatness, when it comes to the azab of akhirah for some people, he says, وَلَكِنَّ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ الشَّدِيدِ. When Allah says something is severe, intense, in His measure, we have to worry a lot. Or when He says it's azim, we have to worry a lot. And then He says, never ever compare the pain of that world to the pain of this world. And then He says, I mention for you one hadith from Sheikh Saduq. And I want all of us to get this lesson from Imam Khomeini, in addition to other lessons, how humble we should be, especially with respect to ulama. We should be humble with respect to every person, but especially ulama. He says, Sheikh Jalilul Qadr, the Sheikh which was great in his position. Saduq Ta'ifah, the most truthful Sheikh. Not that others were not as truthful as him, but his title is Saduq. It's a real title. It's a good, honest title, not just a title without meaning. He was really recognized as a truthful person. He says, this hadith, it is about Jahannam of A'mal, the lowest level of Jahannam, sins of the actions. Jahannam of the actions, sins of actions leading to Jahannam. Still, we cannot cope with it. He says, Sheikh Saduq, who has narrated this hadith, is the one that all ulama show respect to him. The one that was born because of the dua of Imam Zaman. And Imam Zaman had attention to him. And he says, I have received this hadith through different chains of narrations, which are all reliable from Sheikh Saduq. So no doubt about our way to Sheikh Saduq, no doubt about Sheikh Saduq, no doubt about Sheikh Saduq's access. So, what is the hadith? Sheikh Saduq narrates through his own chain of narration from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that Rasulullah said that one day, or Sheikh Saduq is narrating Imam Sadiq said that Rasulullah was one day sitting when Jibra'eel went to him. And Jibra'eel was very sad. And his face, because Jibra'eel sometimes took the form of a human being. As the Quran says about Lady Maryam, تَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا ثَوِيًّا, when the angel went to him, took the form of a human being. Jibra'eel sometimes took the form of Dihye Kalbi. In any way, Jibra'eel was very sad. Rasulullah said, Ya Jibra'eel, mali araka ka'iban hazina. Why I see you very sad and in deep grief? فقال يا محمد فكيف لا أكون كذلك. O Muhammad, how I cannot be sad. And then he said that today the hell is somehow like prepared, or he had a kind of vision of the hell. Manafiq, when they make fire, they blow air, which gives oxygen to fire. In the past, when they used, for example, sword or anything from metal, they had a big like oven, and they used to have something to blow into the fire. So he says, Rasulullah asks him, what is this? And he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked fire, and for 1,000 years it was blown into it, it became red. Then another 1,000 years became white. Then another 1,000 years was blown into it, it became black. Jahannam is like a chain which is 70 zira. Zira is about like 1 meter. It's, from the elbow up to the head of finger. This chain, which سلسلة طولها 70 ذرعا, if one chain of this comes to dunya, burn the dunya. So he says, if one drop of zaqqum also is put in the water of Ahl Dunya, they will all die from its smell only. فَبَكَى رَسُولُ اللَّهِ وَبَكَى جِبْرَائِيل. Both of them cried. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent an angel to them and said, إِنَّ رَبَّكُمَا يَقْرَأُكُمَا السَّلَامِ. Your Lord sent you salam, peace, and says, إِنِّي أَمِنْتُكُمَا مِنْ أَنْ تُذْنِبَا ذَنْبًا أُعَذِّبُكُمَا عَلَيْهِ. Allah sent you salam and said, I am going to protect you from a sin, from sinning, making a sin for which you would be punished by me. It's not that you would sin and I'm not going to punish you. I'm going to help you to refrain from sinning for which you will be punished. Imam Khomeini says, when Rasulullah have so much of concern and worry, and you see up to the last moment of the life of Rasulullah, or also similar to that, Imams, how much they were concerned about Akhirah. Then who are we? Has any angel come to us to give us good news that we are protected? So he says there are many hadiths like this. And actually this is not only in Islam. Existence of hell is something which we find in other Abrahamic religions. And some people who had vision, mystical vision, they have actually seen hell even in dunya. So he says, even if you are not sure, although we are sure, but even if you have doubt, just the possibility of this is enough to make you want to run away from everything and go to desert, to just become like people who lose their sense, because too much to cope with. But the problem is that we are like people who are asleep. We are heedless. So he says we have to be very careful and we have to get rid of our negligence. And then he mentions something about how to treat our bad traits of character. I wanted to finish, but I think we don't need to rush. Inshallah, we discuss this in the next session, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.
اللهم صل على